Коллеги, времени у нас с вами не очень много.
Colleagues, we are pretty short of time, so let's start. I would like to start with some organizational issues. I will act as the moderator of this presentation, let's put it this way, and I would like to introduce my colleagues one by one. So you can see with special equipment and a nice bracelet, there's Vladimir Maketov. This is head of the Sand Chamber of the Russian Federation. Then Anatoly Boris Chubrinov. This is deputy of the State Duma, and Timur Gregorovich Maximov, deputy head of Customs Service, and Bhuvan Aminian, head of the Asset Chamber. Apart from our partners, and we also have Arkady Tarachuk here. He is the head of Kosna, so Mr. Vrenko, representative of the President's administration, heads of profiled organization, Mr. Giverkant, and also Vladimir Nerserov. He is head of the Association of Jewelry Makers of the Eurasian Economic Union. We would like to start this session, but before we do that, two more points. I do understand that this event is actually basically for mass media, so I really wanted to stick to the point and please ask questions only related specifically to the subject that we are discussing right now. After that, on the margins, we can discuss other issues, for example, cryptocurrency and others. So we agreed that we will all be available for mass media. And Mr. Vansov, head of the Association of our factories, I just forgot to introduce him. And one more point, considering our schedule, we need to finish this session at 11, when we will do our best to make our presentation as brief as possible. We'll try to render it quite interactive, and apart from that, I also want you to speak up and express your opinions. After that, at 11 and something, we also have a special event in Stand Alrosa. There will be a special awarding special ceremony specifically for Mr. Karov. You remember the diplomat who was shot, and his wife is going to be present there. I'm asking the journalist after the end of this conference to go to this place, and after that you will need to take place before Dmitry Anatolievich, I mean Prime Minister Medvedev, comes over to deliver a speech here. So please bring the first slide to the screen. Not the first one, but the next one. So why we're actually here? In 2015, a law was put into force, and after that, additional laws were adopted in order to ensure proper monitoring over the turnover of precious stones. We had a period between 2009 and 2015 when the control was not quite there, and we found ourselves in a situation where there were a lot of challenges in the market and problems and violations who really impacted the functioning of the state and also ordinary citizens, because they wanted to buy high quality products which they could not buy. So in 2014 a federal law was adopted. By the way, I can see someone taking pictures, but I think that there is no need to do that because we will share it out afterwards. And quite a number, a set of normative acts was put into force, which allows from the normative point of view to ensure proper monitoring of the market. It turned out that a number of some bad impacts still are there. They're present on the market, which is due to the fact that on one hand we have monitoring system in place, but on the other hand there are a lot of those who still taking advantage of the fact that we don't have enough people to really control everything, and also there are certain limitations because we sometimes cannot just cooperate directly with micro companies. So we do like regulations which says that there has been no serious improvement of the situation. It means that we decided to work in a closer cooperation in the so-called shadow sector to control this very part of the market with law enforcement agencies. Well, you know, we find ourselves quite in ancient times. It seems like when we know jewelry maker, then we think that we can buy from this person. But in fact, this information is not always credible. So we decided that considering that we have certain experience gained in terms of, for example, monitoring the alcohol market, we decided to apply similar practice for precious stones, for jewelry markets, and precious metals. It could ensure a proper interaction between all the participants, including surveillance authorities, also federal executive services like financial service, also customs union, etc. Apart from that, we could do something in order to keep track of every single product in the Russian market. This is you can see on this slide, a very simple slide. In brief, this is, for example, we extract, get precious metal, and so then as soon as it leaves the gates of the factory, then we have a ready-made product, and so then it comes to the distribution. So actually we want to come up with a special system in place enabling us to monitor what is actually happening to this or that particular union, precious metals and stones, where it is delivered from whom, by what entity, and so on and so forth. I'm remind you that on one hand it's like a situation called Big Brother is watching you, but just to refer in other words from my colleague from Ross Monitoring, that according to the international trade conditions for precious metals and stone, there should be a special monitoring system, and actually that will serve to the benefit of the buyers or the end users, especially, you know, people, for example, who buy something and is ready to spend over 600,000 ruble per unit. They are obliged to produce and to show identification documents. This is again just according to the international laws. We talk not only about some philosophic desire to do something, because there are some negative trends, unfortunately, the markets that we need to eliminate and find a remedy to. And summarizing my short presentation, I would like to tell you about our main goals. I'm trying again to be as brief as possible, and these are the expected result of the implementation of integrated information system, and I'm trying to stick to the point. But I want really the representative of the state authorities really to show how it's gonna work in future. We know that there is special chamber, also a saying, for example, chamber who control the precious metal turnover, and SS and other organizations, and probably I would like to ask them to start with stones and to talk a little bit in more detail as to how it is all organized in the market. Dear colleagues, the situation in the sphere of the metal turnover. I'm sorry just to jump in again, it's not very polite. just remind you that it's an interactive event, and here you can actually vote while listening. We have special information about this application. It was demonstrated at the very beginning of the forum, but anyway, at the website of the Financial Forum, you can find information about this. I hope that I put it correctly. Yes, I'm really sorry that I'm jumped in. Please. Over to you. The existing legislation of the Russian Federation, of course, imposes certain restrictions on the metal turnover, and actually there should be no metals with unidentified characteristic with a certain admissible level. But there are certain extraction stages and precious stone turnover rules. So all the steps, starting from the sorting and primary classification, etc. So actually you can see stages, starting, like I said, from sorting, sizing, also unloading words, then crossing of the but there are always risks involved, and unfortunately it is due to the fact that there can be found synthetic stones and other stones that were not properly described in the relevant documentation, that do not have any accompanying documents. So actually the content of the parcels, they are not well regulated, and as a result you can see the very last picture with this magnifying glass, which shows that it all really hampers the process of monitoring, and actually acts as a real obstacle, which actually made us adopt a number of laws, especially to control this multi-stage procedure which accompanies all business process, which covers extraction, production, and other stages in terms of stone and metal turnover. What is suggested now by the government? Well, first of all, of course, regular permanent state surveillance. A special draft has already been developed. And the idea is to use the already existing practice using informational electronic systems, also for the marking of the products, and so on and so forth. But it is all done in order to interrelate all the stages involved. If you have a look at these red arrows, you can see that finally it goes to this very point that contains full information about a specific stone that goes to the next stage. The point is that during the stage of sorting, it is packed, then a special marking is applied, information integrated, and further on during all the other stages, like packing, consignment, you actually oblige to substantiate and confirm that what is inside is actually correspond to what is written on the paper. It can only be done if it is integrated in the common information system. It can only feasible with implementation of information system. It is feasible today, and we have been working on that together with producers and those who extract precious stones that it could actually help to simplify all the procedure related to the customs clearing and crossing of the borders, etc. Because right now it can take just up to 2 or 3 days to do that. But I think that after applying those information system, we could potentially talk about hours. So only 7 several hours or one day to cross the border with precious metals using this informational system where you actually confirm the origin of the metal. So to summarize, the positive impact of this system and its implementation covers not only tax service and some fiscal issues, but also positive results can be found in terms of protection of the consumers' rights, whereas customers they get proven information. For example, if there is a solemn event, something very important in your life, you of course want to make sure that what you buy and what you pay for actually corresponds to the requirements that were given to the in the accompanying documents and were reflected during the acquisition of this or that product. Right now, we also work on the turnover of the so-called synthetic stones. We won't need any additional diagnostic, and I think that we can also help us to diminish the burden of statistics, because on one hand there are certain forms that factories have to fill in and they're obliged to do so, but sometimes they don't do it don't do it correctly. It means that these state authorities don't get the information to take a relevant decision. We will keep on working in close cooperation with all the players and participants of this process, and to do that, the Ministry of Finance in advance announcing this program.
Thank you very much, Andrei. The key words that you have said, that it will help to the consumer to be sure that he really purchases a real precious stone, and this is the work of assaying chamber. Anatoly, you wish to have a floor now. Yeah, thank you. Dear colleagues, this platform is topical, and there is no doubt that it's an important issue, but I would like to draw your attention to 3 points. First, in the framework of anti-corruption law framework, we were oriented to the minimization of administrative barriers and to the creation of service-orientated government. And the second point, I would like to emphasize that today we have adopted more than 100 regulations that are aimed at minimization of corruption. And the most important thing is that every of these regulation is a rule how to act. What we expect of this platform, as the representatives of Goshran already said, apart from the issues that we see, please, we wait proposals from you. We as a platform, we wait for proposals, and we hope that together with the Ministry of Finance, we'll be able to implement them by the next year. Our main proposal, as I have already mentioned, we have less opportunity to act in small companies that we will not open the discussion now regarding this. Thank you for your comment. And I would like to say that I think that it's a key phrase said by Andrei, that the load to the business will not increase. Actually, the business will be working easier. So we'll give the floor to Alexander. He also has an interactive part of his presentation. Thank you, Alexei. Good morning, dear participants, dear guests of the Moscow Financial Forum. For 317 years, Moscow Federal Assaying Chamber has been implementing the assaying supervision. We developed, together with the economy of the Russian Federation, the main 3 pillars that were mentioned by Alexei. The interests of the government, interests of the businesses, and the interests of consumers of jewelry. We are on the threshold of a new technological breakthrough. As assaying supervision and as a governmental control on the turnover of precious stones and precious metals. The topicality of implementation of this informational system has been in interest for a long time. I would like to give you several numbers that reflect that it is important to implement this system soon. According to the Rostat data, the profit from the has been 2,024 million rubles, but as we see in assaying chamber, the turnover of precious stones in jewelry is not less than several tens of billions of rubles. And according to the expert, these gems are not less than $1 billion, are used with the unknown source of origin. And according to the data of Federal Customs Service, the import of gems were only for 200 millions of rubles, but according to the information obtained from the associations of real businesses of precious stones, the retail of precious stones is mainly on brilliant or on diamonds that are not being mined in our country, and we see that these diamonds without any synthetic introductions, this turnover of precious stones in the retail is not possible. Here you can see the pie chart that can reflect that we need to take immediate measures. More than 42,000 of subjects work in the area of turnover of precious stones, and as we see, the first place is occupied by sales, retail and bulk sales. The producers are certified and registered in Russia. There are more than 12,000 real businesses that apply their precious stones to the assaying chamber are much less, as we can see in the slide. 90% of the participants of the precious stones market, there are small businesses, and they are not under regular regular checks, and this is contribution to this shadow economy. We can see real producers. There are 3,624. They supply samples to the assaying chamber, and their turnover is less than 10 kilos. The majority of them has less than 10 kilos, so we can see that in the market, small businesses prevail. Then I would like to show you dynamics of manufacturing, and we can see that the production of domestic precious stones is the peak of the production was in 2008. Afterwards, there is a reduction of volumes, and afterwards there was a rise. And now we again witness shrinkage of volumes of production in the area of precious stones. I think that it is related. As we see in the next slide, retail prices and retail sales are increasing. This is due to the rise of dollar price. We can assume that there are not legal shadow economy share in this market. The real the real profit should be much higher. I would also like to demonstrate the information about import and export of precious metals and precious stones. We see both decrease in export and import. In 2016, we have witnessed only 200, something more than 200 items of export, and we know that Russia is a huge producers of gold, and we are lagging behind world standards. So we have still much to acquire. In the next slide, I would like to show you the cycle of turnover of precious metal in the Russian Federation. This complex informational system implies main stages. Introduction of information regarding origin of the metals, and it will lead to the increase of transparency and efficiency of the sector. Imagine that your ring or chain, it starts its cycle from mining, from the recovery, then it goes to FNH plant, manufacturing facility. It's an important stage because here the first introduction to the informational system is done, and afterwards in the technical stage, it can be sent to export. If we speak about jewelry, then this raw product goes to a jewelry manufacturing facility, and there it gets its shape, and the producer will have to introduce the information regarding the weight and how many items he has produced. On this stage, after assaying and sealing, the jewelry or precious stones will be introduced, and the producer will be obliged to introduce information to the informational system. Afterwards, the item goes to retail or bulk sales, and then it goes to the final consumer. On the stage from jewelry producer to retail seller, there is one more element to be planned in the framework of informational system. So, Alexander, can we go to the next slide? Here I would like to show you the enhanced view of our know-how elaborated by the specialist from St. Petersburg. This is the simultaneous marking of seal and barcode. It will help to define source of origin. So today we have brought these items with us. Here is an example of barcode and seal on the metal, and a more difficult, and I think that it will be in higher demand, the barcode on the label, which will be used in retail sales. I think that we will make both, but not at the same time. Yes, there are two elements of informational system that will become an important factor for informational base. So I would ask my colleague to demonstrate this for our participants and guests of the forum. First, we'll demonstrate the slide, and in the interactive, we'll demonstrate barcode, which is on the jewelry item, and which has information. So on the screen you have already see it. This barcode is 1 millimeter per 1 millimeter, and it is almost not noticed on the item, and it will last for the whole life cycle of the jewelry item. Here in this barcode, we can find a 10-digit code that will help to define where and by whom this item was produced. And I would like to draw your attention to the fact that is important for all consumers and for every person who wants to buy a jewelry. We can get an information where and by whom the jewelry was produced. So here on the silver bracelet, afterwards, after finalizing the presentation, I invite everybody to try to read this barcode with your smartphones. So here on the screen, you can see the information that a consumer can get in retail shop. So here we see characteristics of the item, who is the producer. The insertions are also possible. It's possible to define information about them. Finalizing my presentation, I would like to say that this informational system will lead the assaying chamber and the state control on the turnover of precious metal and precious stones, will improve the control and will help to increase the efficiency of the system.
Метки.
I would like to draw attention to the key aspect. So millimeter per millimeter, this special use for the assaying chamber. So what are they going to check out on the first turn? Well, first of all, the mark of assay and the assay that is that can be found in the relevant documentation, and the customer in a shop can use a special device like even a cell phone, like you said, with a special application, can be downloaded from Apple Store, and after reading, after scanning this mark, can get information that you have just seen at the screen. We also going to show you a short cartoon about this, but before we do that, I want Timur to comment a little bit on the custom service position on that. Yes, dear participants, well, first of all, I would like to say that together with the Ministry of Finance, we especially have an interactive electronic system of communication, virtually for the state control as well, particularly as applied to the sphere of precious metals, and it proves to be quite a success. As for subordinate services, I think that together with participation, we will be able to tackle and eliminate a number of challenges. Even by simple comparing statistical data, we really can get a picture as is what is happening in the market, because if we don't control the exported and imported goods, we won't be able to achieve any results. We need to analyze the internal turnover, and by doing that, we together with within the Federal Customs Service, together with other authorities, will be able to identify these so-called shadow or gray zones, and at the same time, we should say that we are really going to diminish the burden potentially. That is why I do not quite agree that is gonna, render the whole process more complicated. No, it will simplify the whole thing and enable us to use very precious information. Also could be an asset for our fiscal reserves and fiscal policy. The turnover, jewelry, and this very domain is something that can be hardly regulated and administered. This is a very complicated piece of the cake, but as soon as we are able to see real figure related to the exported and imported products, items, we will be able to control the markets in a more efficient way. We have already stepped in and already started to participate in this project, and we will keep on working together with the Ministry of Finance. I should say that the Federal Customs Service is really one of the leaders in terms of information support and information systems, and this is something that we should do too, and probably take a page out of their book. And now we prepared some visualization for you. We said that Goznakers will be one of those responsible for the implementation of the product, and that is why we prepared some kind of an advertising cartoon, and I hope that it's gonna be of interest for you. Probably just give answers to some of your questions. A story of one ring. Dear, do you remember when it's the anniversary of our wedding? But of course, I do. Oh my god, I don't know nothing about this. What should I buy for her? This is the best one. This is a golden ring. Are you sure? Well, if you have any doubts, you can just read the QR barcode using your cell phone. Okay, I see the Gosnak. So, integrated information system in the sphere of precious metals turnover control. So already sorted and classified over 300 types of precious metals. Integrated information system in the sphere of precious metal and stones control. 20 tons of cast iron have been melted into nuggets. Processed over 100 diamonds of different forms and sizes. One ring out of 750 plate mark. The assaying chamber of the Russian Federation. One ring with a gold 750 plate mark with a diamond. A huge number of rings have been handed over to the jewelry shop. This is one of the jewelry shops in Moscow with 750 plate mark. And now you can see the barcodes. This is gold. Very interesting. I think I will take this one. So this ring was sold to the customer. So the husband gave Lucy the same ring. I really liked it. Yes, but does it have a special plate mark or a mark of assay? Maybe it's not real. So you need to check this out. Thank you very much. You can see that our colleagues can print not only money but also make a real movie. I think that now everything is absolutely clear to you as it's how it's gonna be organized. And right now we have some more speakers. Anatoly, would you like to add something or shall we continue? So we have three associations here, and I would like to give them the floor. Yes, just grab the microphone. Most welcome. Good afternoon, Good morning, dear friends. It's my pleasure to be here and to speak on that subject since we are Russian jewelry makers really want to keep the Russian markets in great order, and all those efforts could really help us and simplify the whole thing for us. I should say that the system of assay control was actually initiated by Peter the Great in a year, many years ago in 1600. So the point is that right now every single unit is going to have a special Markov assay, will be controlled by the relevant authorities and will be also monitored in shops, place where we actually buy jewelries. Dear friends, right now we're in the year 2017. This is a year of digital technologies, and when we falsify the Markov assay, well, it can be easily done technically in the state of affairs that we have today, and that is why we need to work with it. And it's time is ripe to talk about implementation of digital monitoring. To do that, we need to integrate a special national integrated identification system. It means that the producer will be apply special plate marks or identification codes, and the state authorities in that term will be control the circulation of these items using special IT systems. What is are we gonna get? Well, first of all, it will make the market more transparent. Of course, creation of such a system will involve certain efforts and also investment, but there we will definitely benefit from implementation of such a system. Well, thanks to elimination of the shadow sector, the government will definitely benefit from that, and also we shouldn't forget about the end user system of innovative electronic identification will actually prevent it from buying falsified products, and which is even more important for the market development. It will allow the customer to get detailed information, all the characteristics, including exhaust information about the every single item, about its properties, etc. So I really think that a great job was done. We absolutely support those measures. Thank you very much. Vladimir, would you like to add something? Yes, of course. Good morning, dear colleagues and participants of the forum. Of course, we do support creation of unified information system of jewelry registration, and as has previously been mentioned, the shadow part of the market accounts for one half of the markets, and actually this is bad news, which makes us think that implementation of such a project could help us improve the situation, the general situation for the so-called honest players in the market, and healthy competitive conditions where we can all will be able to work in line with common standards. And considering the fact that we will have to utilize the system and to also to take a direct participation in the creation of the information system, there is something I want to ask you to do. I want you to get us involved as experts. We are ready to participate in developing technical specification and technical briefs, and we would also be part of the expert panel if there is any in terms of creation of this information system. Thank you very much.
I noted your request. So now let's speak about the manufacturing areas, the affinage manufacturing facilities. I am glad that we have such a meeting. It's the first what I wanted to say. And the second thing is that the support from the Ministry of Finance and from you personally and from Alexander After this meeting, we would like to hold a big scientific and practical conference with all the players involved in the process of manufacturing jewelry, and we would like to take into consideration what we have heard here. And before we go to the answers, Anatoly, please, the floor is yours. I would like to emphasize that I'm really glad as I see that everybody is interested in enhancing assaying supervision, and we speak about modern informational technologies. Today, the government has opportunity and should improve the control. And as I see, the investment will be minimal and the effect will be very high. The quality is guaranteed in the framework of informational system of control and supervision. All participants of the market, government on the one side and participants of market on the other side, will only profit. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have forgotten to say that Anatoly Borisovich is not only a deputy but also a deputy president of the committee, and will count with your support if we need any. Regarding the laws, I would like to invite all of you to the session today in the afternoon. We are inventing a bicycle with golden. We are not inviting the bicycle with golden wheels. This program has been already invented. This is a system of marking of jewelry. This system has been already implemented in alcohol sales and is planning to be implemented in pharmacy area. How the system will work in terms of IT, we'll discuss today at the session about marking of the jewelry products. So if you are interested in this topic, please, you are invited to attend this meeting. So we have 15 minutes for questions and answers. So there are several questions as I see. So colleagues, please. We'll have to implement some kind of system. I saw that. So sorry, but we'll come to you back. Nikolai Kuznetsov, RIA Novosti. When are you planning to implement this marking? Well, first there are two stages. The first stage is quite simple. It is related to QR code stamping on the label. And here we cannot exclude the possibility of forging, because the system of anti-counterfeit system implemented in the alcohol sales, it decreases the number of false labels, but not excluded completely. And speaking about nano marks that are put in the item itself, not on the label, but on the item itself. This nano mark will be able to will make an opportunity for an inspector to control if it's correct or not, and this marking needs re-equipment. So unfortunately now I cannot name you the date when it will be implemented, because we will need an specific equipment. So we are at the beginning of the path. Do you want to add something? Thank you, Alexander. I would like to say that we are only on the threshold of all this long way, and we are in the stage of discussion. The Association of Jewelry Producers proposed to introduce a special mark for import, and we probably will start as a pilot project as a Ministry of Finance. as a project to implementation of the import items. And today, with existing facilities, we could try it. The problem is in statistics there are not so many, but in reality there are. Here we should understand that when we were speaking about marking of fur coats, the expert assessment how many not legal fur coats on the markets are, we see that there was a lagging behind of the information, and we expect this information in terms of precious metal and precious stones to be prepared. The superficial problems will be resolved in 2018, and the rest of the problems in 2019, 2020. My question is compounds of two parts. The first is regarding the plan. Maybe you have certain companies that are already participating in experimental projects. And the second question, maybe it's a kind of womanish question. How much is it? What are the sources of financing of this program, and how much this program costs? The first, regarding the stages, the formalization, as any governmental project, we need to approve roadmap. It should be elaborated, approved by all the stakeholders. The terms will be similar to what I have already mentioned. Regarding the costs, we will speak in rubles for each items. The average purchase in a jewelry shop is around 5,000-6,000 rubles. We understand that the majority of items, there are mainly silver items, and there are mainly cheap items. And if we eliminate these cheap items, we'll see the average price of purchase will increase. Of course, the financing will be from the part of the government, because the implementation of informational system will require investment from the governmental sector. We'll use the elements of the system that will be discussed today in the afternoon. So the government will have certain costs. But on the point of view of business costs, I think that the minimum costs for marking, I think it will cost several rubles for each items. And we probably will allow to eliminate the marking of stamps. So the number of the stamps will not increase. So you don't have to make two stamps. You don't have to put a name, as actual name of producer on the item if you have a barcode. So the investments will be low, but the efficiency will be high. So if I'm not mistaken, the re-equipment will be financed by the government. Yeah, it's true, but it's difficult to estimate the costs. Well, my colleagues, I don't know, maybe they are ready to name a price, but I personally don't have this information. These are the normal informational systems which are implemented in every sector of economy, and it doesn't imply any additional costs. So now I will not give any specific detail regarding price, because if I say now 100 rubles, you write it, and afterwards it turns out that it's 50 rubles or 55, well, it will not be appropriate. So if you have any comments, please, I give the floor to you. Thank you very much. We normally, in the other industries, we thought it as a transaction. Today we are working and we are studying this issue, and plus the software, which will be a basic element for this system. We have a huge experience of Ross Monitoring, who created a base that allowed to introduce information on each and every step. And this will be a basic element for the informational system. It will be a normal software, and after certain calculations, will bring this information to the public.
Да, то есть
So it's we're not talking about billions. Considering the fiscal effect that Timur mentioned, I think that it will pay back very quickly. Andrei, you wanted to add something, or how would you like to add something, or? Okay, so I saw that someone raised a hand over there. Yes, Alexei, I have a question for you. Considering the seizures that you referred to, I mean, 12 million stones that are actually across the border. Don't you think that right now time is ripe that probably lift duties for precious metals that's similar that was done in year 2000 for some machinery? Don't you think that this is the right moment to give it a try? Well, I think that these things are interrelated. We started our discussion by saying that whether or not we're going to levy, I mean, all the duties, etc. But for precious stones, for small gemstones and precious stones that are not extracted in Russia, but it's only just all about discussion. I'm not quite sure whether we support it or it we're just in the process of analyzing that. I know you, but please introduce yourself. Sergei Dichenko, Union of Precious Metal Refinery. Well, of course, this system is first of all meant to extract from the turnover illegal jewelry, and I think that, of course, the amount of such confiscated units will grow in number. I have a question. So what are you going to do with them afterwards? I'm asking you this question because that, as you know, Bukhram was created in 2000. And it was done for storing confiscated jewelries. So, hence the question, what was done with them afterwards? I'm asking you because if you actually put it back in turnover and segregate jewelries that actually represent a certain value, but others they could actually send to refinery factories, refineries, and so that they can be processed again. I don't understand your question. So could you please explain how do you sell metal units to metal refineries, for example? Approximately once per year, we send 1 ton of such a product to the metal refinery, which is quite a big scope. We have a certain practice where we put something into production, but representatives that represent today jewelry making companies, they can confirm and agree that a certain amount of jewelry is actually withdrawn from the production line, which are in no demand from customers. So we what we confiscate and what became a part of illegal turnover, Afinash is and sending this product to the refinery is something really good. Well, I don't know all these secrets, but anyway, we're actually quite short of time, so we have only a bit of time for 2 or 3 questions. Utkin Eduard Gedzim of Jewelry Makers. We have common Eurasian economic space. Are we going to negotiate potential implementation of a similar system of the countries in the countries that make part of the union, because they could consider it as a certain burden and obstacle to free circulation of jewelries? Well, you know that similar practices have been applied in other spheres, but we, as for negotiations related to the jewelry, and we actually still negotiating the issue of Crimea, by the way. You know that some new members joined the customs union, and I should say that a number of issues, they are very difficult to negotiate on. For example, mutual surveillance or control, and unless we unless there is no solution to some of the outstanding issues, we won't be able to achieve certain results. So it means that as of today, we are going to implement this monitoring system within this country, and as soon as we gain momentum, then we, of course, probably try to do that together with our partners, with other countries of the union. Yes, I just would like to add that next week another stage of negotiations is scheduled to talk about the jewelry turnover amongst the members of the Eurasian Union. And just like was mentioned, we managed to reach certain agreements, compromise in terms of export, imports, and also utilization of system to monitor the turnover amongst the member states. Of course, considering that new members adhere to the union, and you know about that, Armenia also have some precious metals, and primarily diamonds, etc. We had some, cases with some illegal hallmarks that were jewelry hallmark or mark of essay. Also, some other countries, they experience some problems with the shadow sector. A lot of outstanding issues, so they will all be discussed next week. We, being representative of the state authorities, we work with legislative framework, but we work in close cooperation with our partners. As for the federal state control, well, hence I should say that we achieved great results together with Belarus, with Kazakhstan, because we have a lot in common, and Kazakhstan adopted a relevant law last year. It means that the country really improved its legislation part in terms of jewelry turnover, and I do hope that other member states will also move in the same direction. Thank you very much. We have just a bit of time for the very last question. Diana Sona, Reuters. I have a question for Alexei. And have you already assessed the size of the profit that could be returned to the budget? As for costs, well, you mentioned that. And just some clarification, Alexander, for question for you: are we going to have a minimum threshold of the size or the price per unit that this policy will be applied to? Because if you apply those marks on every single unit, starting from this spoons or crosses, which cost 150 ruble, probably it's not going to generate any profit at all. Yes, I'd like to answer this question. Considering the recent changes in the legislation that were actually mentioned 2015, we actually said that in the framework of that initiative that certain server units can apply marks on a volunteering basis. For example, manufacturers from Luka, they do it because they use it as a marketing tool, allowing them to sell the light silver units much easier. Moreover, the size has been shrinking over the past 3 years. For example, last year we made some analysis and say that 2.9 grams was the average size of gold unit. Now this is 1.9. We can see that the trend is absolutely apparent. But right now, according to the legislation, up to silver units up to 3 grams, they are freed from this variation. So there is no mark that needs to be applied. But still, yes, we just want to say that yes, there are certain categories that not fall within these limits, so they can be sold without any mark. As for Kazakhstan, I'm not quite sure what kind of metals they have there, copper or other, I don't know, and how much they have, and whether this issue will be relevant for this. But the most important thing is that we wanted to actually eliminate the amount of falsified units in the market. I would like to answer to the first part of your question. Yes, Timur, place over to you. As for the fiscal impact, well, you know, the story that actually happened with the fur marks showed that there is something that cannot be calculated in advance, because we have some figures taken at the top of your head, and it's very difficult to make any accurate assessment. But in order to make this market more transparent, we need to force the players to show the real price, real figures, because the turnover will be more legal. But if you don't know the base, if you don't know the reference points, benchmarks, then you cannot make any estimations. Yes, but we just want to protect the customers. If you buy, for example, a bracelet or a necklace for 500 ruble, and then it's covered in rust like several weeks after, well, that is really bad. That is why we want to protect and to eliminate all those illegal workshops, etc., and allow, like I said, honest players to boost, to increase their market share. We will be making different estimations, etc. But as Timur said, yes, there was quite a situation with the first. Unfortunately, we don't have the time for for any other questions, but we will have the time to do so later. I just want to ask you to do one thing. You remember I told you about this voting system. So, colleagues, I want to ask you from the department and explain how to use this system.
Good morning. So you have to enter the application, as was mentioned by Alexei. Have you downloaded this application? Afterwards, you need to enter the section of programs, which is on the bottom. Then find our session. You can find it in the list. The start is at 10 a.m. Afterwards, you enter the section of survey. Then introduce the PIN code, it's 1119, and vote if you support or not. Please vote for good and against bad. How long does it take to vote? Okay. While we are voting, I remind you that I invite the journalists to the Alrosa stand, where we'll present the certificate uh, to the wife of late diplomat. The certificate about the name of the diamond, and every person who's interested is invited to the stand of Alrosa. And also those who are interested can approach me and I show how it works. So the result is on the screen. And who does not support? So the the employees of the department do not support it. They will have to work with this.